Welcome back. So we are going to go ahead and get right into our Western Conference All-Star predictions. So without further ado, Davis, who is your Western Conference captain?
The GOAT, LeBron James.
Ron James.
LeBron James. I mean, Anthony Davis is having a little bit of a regression this season. It's not insane. He's not playing horribly by any means, but he's definitely not playing to the level that we saw last season when he was playing with LeBron. And kind of in that absence, I mean, LeBron is LeBron. He's the favorite player in the league. He will be the captain. I don't think it's really up for any debate. He's 36, still kicking 25 points out like it's nothing. Over 40% from the three, which is his best. It's his best shooting percentage from three in his career. Fun fact. And I don't know. I
That
mean, he
was fun.
continues to get it done night in, night out. Uh, he's not, what do they call it? Like resting games, like a lot of the big stars do. Well, I should say to the level that some big stars do. So I like to see him out there. And LeBron will be the team captain out west. But rounding out my starters, I have Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, and Paul George. Do you have any disagreements there?
So I have LeBron as the captain as well.
Okay.
Jokic, Steph, Luka, but I have Kawhi.
I'm okay with that. Honestly, I think I'm okay with either Kawhi or Paul George. I struggled knowing which one to put in, but I just think Paul George has been on a little bit more of a tear this season. I mean, we can talk about some of the defensive attributes that Kawhi has over
That you love so
Paul
much.
George. That I do love defense. That's why I have a soft spot for Kawhi. But at the same time, I mean, you can't really discount a guy. And Paul George is shooting 50% from the field, 45 from the three, over 90%, 92% from the free throw line. I mean, this is a great start by Paul George, and especially early on in the season, he was carrying them in a lot of the games. And Kawhi's kind of picked up some of the slack recently, but
Yeah, I just think the edge for me for Kawhi is I think a lot of this. I don't know if I want to say necessarily a recency bias, but I just think Paul George's numbers, well, they are fantastic without a doubt. I don't want to put that aside, but I think people just feel like this jump is bigger because of how atrocious he played in the playoffs last year. But I mean, 2 years ago, Paul George was an MVP candidate. So I think people forget that. Like Paul George is very capable of putting up these elite numbers. I just think it's that jump. People are like, whoa, like, no, this is Paul George. It's just last year was an anomaly. And so that to me is that sort of, I don't know if recency bias, but that gap for me, because Kawhi just does this consistency day in, day out. He's a robot. And he also is fantastic on the defensive end. So I had that little edge there, but that's why I have Kawhi sort of starting.
I mean, I'm literally okay with either. I could flip a coin and not really care which of those two ends up becoming the starter. Um,
So it's etching.
I don't know. For me, I don't think it was a recency bias. I think if anything, him being in MVP consideration in previous seasons and knowing that he's able to put up these ridiculous numbers, I think that reinforced my belief that, Paul George is one of the top players in this league and he should be a starter more than anything. I don't think it had anything to do with like how he struggled last season. I think, I mean, everyone at the time even understood that playoff P was a little bit of an anomaly and whatnot. So I don't know. But I mean, I do like the defense. So let's put Kawhi in there.
Let's do Kawhi.
Let's bust it down on Kawhi.
Perfect. All right, and then why don't you rattle off our starters, and then we'll go right into the reserves.
Yeah, so for our Western All-Star team starters, we have at captain LeBron James. And then we have Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and Kawhi Leonard.
Awesome. All right, so for the reserves, we can probably go ahead and etch in Paul George.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I also have Damian Lillard.
Yep.
Yep, I think that's pretty straightforward. He struggled a little bit to start the season, but I mean it's Dame time. That man's been cooking lately. Hit 2 banger threes against the Bulls with a buzzer beaters. One of them kind of nasty. He's been hooping lately, especially with CJ out injured. So I think Dame's pretty straightforward as a reserve for the
Don't
West.
forget, you said that Dame Lillard could be MVP this season.
That was my bold take.
we will see. He's not even you're not even predicting him for a starter at this point, but
there's a lot of season left.
There is a lot of season left. I'm gonna go with one of mine next because I think this one is a little bit contentious, but I think he deserves to be there. DeMar DeRozan. Thoughts?
No, he's not even on my honorable mentions.
He has career highs in just about everything outside of points, limiting turnovers. This Spurs team, another team that a lot of pundits were writing off going into this season, and DeMar DeRozan's kind of been carrying a lot of the load, but he's elevated his playmaking a lot this season in terms of facilitating for other players, getting other guys involved, and he's shooting more efficiently. I don't know. It's kind of like why I had Colin Sexton on the list and why I wanted to get this pick out there early, because I knew you'd disagree with it. But, guys that are leading teams to like surprising heights, I say deserve recognition. And DeMar DeRozan, he's been a 4-time All-Star in the past. It's not ridiculous to think he could be an All-Star this season. But he just doesn't get a lot of love, by a lot of the national media, just because the Spurs aren't really talked about a whole lot. But he's been sneaky good.
I think one factor is I don't think sneaky good gets reflected in the All-Star predictions, in my opinion. Well, not necessarily predictions, in the All-Star selections.
Sure.
Just because a lot of this is fan vote and media vote, and so that I think that plays a role in this. And
there's a
also,
lot of people in Texas.
I also have. I just think I have several people I would have chosen over DeMar DeRozan. So we're gonna set that name to the side for now, and I vote we can discuss that when we get near to the end with some more contentious players, because I can't even wrap my head around that choice right now.
Hey, just because you're not knocking down threes doesn't mean you're not making an impact on the game.
I would agree, but I just think there's so many other players that are just way better options.
Okay, let's go with one of those better options, Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, without a doubt, Donovan Mitchell should be on the reserve list. Been playing fantastic lately. The Utah Jazz just had their 10-game winning streak. I believe it was 10, ended by the Nuggets, but he's been playing incredible, been putting up nice numbers on one of the best teams in the West.
Are you willing to concede that he is now in your top 25 players in the NBA?
I'd have to look at the list to see who I'm knocking out.
Well, I remember a lot going into this season, you were very adamant about Donovan Mitchell not being in your top 25, and that it was blasphemy that I had him ranked at 14 or 15.
Let me take a look at our list real quick.
Okay.
No, we have Donovan Mitchell. It was Jamal Murray.
No, we were debating about.
Okay, you're right.
I conceded.
You had him really high
down, but yeah, you didn't have him on your list. I just think
I would drop Chris Paul from the list.
All right, I'm just glad to hear he is now in your top 25, because the Utah Jazz have been absolutely on fire. A team that I wasn't really high on coming into this season compared to specifically one team, and that's the Trailblazers, as we've talked about in some of our Western Conference standing predictions coming into this season. But we got a long season ahead of us, and we'll see what's to come. But I think at this point, there's no reason not to have Donovan Mitchell making the All-Star game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go ahead and get into my another reserve I have. I think this is a pretty safe one. Anthony Davis.
Yep.
More than deserving. Definitely struggling this year, but at the end of the day, it's Anthony Davis. He's going to be here. the fans are going to vote him in. He's on one of the most popular teams in the NBA and the favorites to win the title in the Los Angeles Lakers. So, yeah, I think it's pretty easy, straightforward. Anthony Davis, Western Conference Reserve.
Write it in. It's
Perfect.
said and done.
All right, who do you have next?
Okay, a guy that I have talked a little bit of shade. I know you're extremely high on. I do have.
I think I know who it is.
I have Zion.
Yes, sir.
Williamson making the West Reserves.
Let's go, baby.
I mean, to be fair,
I struggled to put him in as a starter, but I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, I was about
kidding.
to. Woo. Okay,
I'm
you
kidding.
scared me with that. I don't know. I mean, the only reason I'm skeptical of putting Zion on this list is his defense, similar to Trae Young, which I don't think it's that comparable. I don't think he brings that horrible of defense of what Trae Young brings.
He's a better off-ball defender.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, especially a lot of the defensive expectations that were coming on to him and the level of energy that we've seen from him, growing up, going to Duke, and just the all out effort on defense that we've seen from him. We have not seen that in the NBA once. I don't know if that will ever click in, or if some of his bones and muscles are starting to wear down already because of his frame. But I don't know. It is a little bit of a motor problem in my opinion, which is sad because he seems to me like a player that coming into this league loved basketball more than anything. I mean, I assume he still does, but maybe the job's just getting to him. I mean, he's just clocking in hours at this point, putting up good numbers. I do think there's a coaching problem in New Orleans as we speak. But I don't know. There's some other reasons why the Pelicans have been struggling. JJ Redick's having career like horrible numbers. Lonzo Ball hasn't really been fitting extremely well into some of the schemes. Their defense has been horrible, and they just haven't really been able to get floor spacing figured out, especially with this whole Steven Adams and Zion. Whenever they're both on the floor, their spacing is just horrible. And I don't know. I think a better coach can figure out some of those problems that they're having. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I still think Zion's deserving of having a spot on this list. I think he will make the All-Star game specifically because he's one of the fan favorites. And so, he might not be deserving of a spot right now, but I still think he'll get in.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's definitely going to get it just based on the fan vote alone. But he's been playing well this year. I mean, he's been doing nice stuff out there in New Orleans. They've definitely been struggling. I know this isn't necessarily the topic of this podcast episode, but you sort of brought it up, and I feel like I have to say something. For me, in my opinion, I think the biggest issue down there in NOLA is the roster construction. Would a new coach come in and help? Absolutely. Van Gundy has helped in aspects. Like their defense has improved dramatically compared to last year. But as a result, their offense has suffered dramatically. And so I do think a new coach could definitely sort of balance those two out for this team. But I'm seeing a lot of issues with roster construction. They don't have enough shooting and spacing, as you kind of alluded to. I fully expect to see Lonzo Ball traded. JJ Redick, I don't hate a trade just because he hasn't been playing that well. One trade I'd love to see, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd love to see Lonzo go to the Mavs because I think that would help out Luka so much on the defensive side. And in return, the Pelicans, and it might not be straight up, obviously, but I'd love to see the Pelicans try and get Kleba because he's this stretch five, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
Can stretch out the floor, and then maybe you sort of work a way to move Steven Adams out of there to another team. A lot of teams in the NBA would love a Steven Adams on their roster. I think that would make a really nice front court with Kleba and Zion down there in New Orleans. You got Brandon Ingram, and then you got one outstanding young rookie, or not rookie, but young guard, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And then they also haven't really been able to play Kyra Lewis, their lottery pick. I think that's one reason why they're moving away from Lonzo and a lot of these trade rumors that come up because they have these young guards and they're sort of in the same mold of Lonzo right now in terms of like their floor. I think like if you plugged in Alexander Walker or Kyra Lewis, they'd probably give you similar stats and numbers and output of Lonzo. And so might as well get them going and try and sort of see where they can lead you, because we kind of at this point know what Lonzo's ceiling is.
Yeah, and just one more thing to add before we get back to the main topic of this episode. I have been impressed with Kyra Lewis whenever he is on the court. He takes advantage of his limited minutes and definitely leaves it all out there. He seems like he's pretty solid shooter from what I've seen. I have more confidence in him shooting a three than I do most of their team, which is ridiculous because he's only getting less than 9 minutes a game. But I'm just glad to see he's taking advantage of his limited situation and leaving it all out there. I think that bodes well for his future, and I hope to see more of him. But let's get back to our Western Conference reserves for this All-Star team. So currently we have Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, Zion Williamson, Damian Lillard, and Anthony Davis. I believe we
have 2 more to go.
2 more. Thoughts?
So, I know you have DeMar DeRozan as one of your 2. I'll go ahead and rattle off my next 2 just because I feel like the next 2 are sort of we might have to be a little flexible. So I have Ja Morant.
He hasn't played enough games for me.
I understand that. I just think he was snubbed last year, and I just think similar to Zion in the sense of he's going to get voted in by the fans, and he's also been putting up great numbers. And I know this is sort of our predictions now, but I think as voting continues through the next month or so, he's going to be playing enough games by then. So I'm not as concerned there. But I have Ja Morant, and then my other one is CJ McCollum, who before his injury was playing, in my opinion, probably the best basketball of his career. He was playing absurd. He was the best player on the Portland Trail Blazers. I mean, he was averaging like 27 a game. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I have CJ in there as my last one.
So I will say I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as my last pick.
No.
I do. Similar reason as DeMar DeRozan, similar reason as Colin Sexton. He is helping a team that no one had faith in, right? I mean, especially after all the, getting rid of Chris Paul and like 4 of their 5 starters last season, everyone was saying, okay, this Oklahoma City team is probably going to, absolutely be the worst team in the league besides maybe Detroit. And they're 8-10 right now. And pretty much Shai is the only reason that they're even winning games. I mean, he's been playing phenomenal basketball, and I like giving credit to the young players. I think, another team that doesn't really get a lot of media coverage, small market, Oklahoma City, no one really watches their games because they're not a very exciting team to watch. But I mean, Shai is putting up 22 points per game, over 51% from the field. He's limiting his turnovers. And I don't know. I think, he upped his playmaking significantly from last season, which makes sense because Chris Paul's no longer there. He was the, driving factor last season in a lot of their playmaking sets. But, going from 3 assists a game to 6.5, that's a significant jump. And, we've seen other aspects of his game round out enough to the point where I think he's ready to be an all-star. And I don't know. I like kind of these underdog players, these guys on teams that, shouldn't really be doing anything special, and they're doing something special because of a player. And I like giving those players recognition.
I'm going to name off 2. These are I'm going to name off 3 honorable mentions that I would have before those 2. If you are interested in having one of these guys instead. Devin Booker, Brandon Ingram, and Rudy Gobert.
There's no
I
way
would
we
have
can put
any of
two
those
Pelicans
three over Shea or DeMar DeRozan
There's
on
no
this team.
way we can have two Pelicans players making the All-Star when they're sitting at the almost dead last in their Western
But they
Conference.
ain't dead last.
I said almost. I don't
I mean,
know.
that's fine.
There's two
I'm just
Pelicans-
naming off players that I think are more deserving at the end of the day than Shea and DeMar DeRozan.
I'd be okay putting CJ in there,
Okay.
and I'd be okay putting Devin Booker in there.
I'll live with that.
Perfect. So rounding out our Western Conference reserves, we have Anthony Davis, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, Donovan Mitchell.
Luka's a starter.
Yep. No, you're right. Sorry, I'm tripping. So Paul George, Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum. I think I got that right.
Here, I'll rattle them off.
I didn't write them down. I was just.
Yeah, I'll just rattle them off again just to be sure. So we have our reserves are Damian Lillard, Paul George, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Donovan Mitchell, CJ McCollum, and Devin Booker.
Perfect.
If that ain't the best list I've ever heard, I don't know what it is.
Some more Western Conference snubs that we should just throw out there. Chris Paul is a fan favorite. He's been doing some nice things, taking a little bit of regression, but I mean, it is what it is. Still one of the top players in the league. We can absolutely mention De'Aaron Fox.
Yep.
Brandon Ingram, Jamal Murray, John Wall, Miles Turner, Rudy Gobert, as we talked about.
Miles Turner's in the East.
Yep, you're right. Shea. And
Another one could be John Wall, Victor Oladipo, Christian Wood.
I like Christian Wood.
Christian Wood kind of nice with it.
Also, it's really wild to see how, going from one of the worst defensive teams with the Rockets last season to all of a sudden they're phenomenal defensively just because they get rid of James Harden is just interesting.
Well, they did add a lot of pieces.
I know. But because John Wall was in the league.
Well, the Nets are also horrific on defense, and guess who they have? James Harden.
That is true. That's what I'm saying. But James Harden does kind of click in his defensive abilities in the playoffs because I feel like there's a big jump from what we see defensively from James Harden from the regular season and then what we see from him in the playoffs. I think everyone knows he's capable of playing defense. It's just a matter of he's just not expending that much energy on the defensive side during the regular season because they can score any team out to death and make the playoffs. So just why try?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, no, it's definitely been an entertaining season so far. I think it will continue to be definitely interesting. And I can't wait to see our all-star predictions become 100% accurate.
Do you think Kristaps can get in now that he's kind of back and healthy? Once he can just get more games under, do you think there's any conversation where he can somehow sneak into a reserve spot?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. I'm going to go with no, but there's always the chance the dude just starts going on a tear. And if he does, he could, but I think a lot of that also has to do with Dallas ain't been playing well, and like their record's pretty bad. So, if they go on like a ridiculous win streak and start like really kicking in a high gear, and a lot of that's because Kristaps starts playing well, maybe.
All right. So with that, we are going to wrap up our all-star predictions and go into our final break.
All right.